Hey everyone, so I just wanted to do a tutorial today on exporting images from Photoshop for websites. Obviously when you're exporting images you always want to get that balance between a high quality image with a low file size, so I'll go through those things today, and what I'm going to show you is basically how to get an image that's around 5 megabytes down to 250 kilobytes or under. So here we are, we're in Photoshop. Basically you don't need to know anything about Photoshop to do this. Obviously you need access to Photoshop, but other than that it doesn't require any past knowledge of Photoshop. So obviously you can see here I'm using a Photoshop 2023, but this should be fairly similar in pretty much all versions of Photoshop unless you have an ancient one. So first things first, what we want to do, basically we've got our image here. There are a few ways that you can basically reduce the file size of an image, so the megabytes or kilobytes of an image, so that you can then export that or add that to a website. So the three things that I consider that you can alter are you can crop the image. So if it's a Bennett image, generally they might not need to be this wide. I generally sit at around 900 pixels wide. You can see there my crop's already set at 2400 by 1000 pixels. So you could try cropping it. If that's all that you need, that's immediately going to reduce the file size. But say you had parallax effect and you want some extra image above and below, you might need a bigger file size. So we'll work with just a standard file size today. But the first thing you can do to reduce the file size is crop the image. The next one is to reduce the dimensions. So we'll see in a second that this image is about 6000 pixels wide. It doesn't need to be that big, so you can reduce the image dimensions. And the third one is you can start adjusting the quality of the image, and we'll go into that as well. So to get to where we need to be, you want to go to File, Export, and then Export As. There is this Save for Web Legacy. That's obviously legacy version. I had been using that up until recently, probably up until a few months ago, just because I was in the old ways of doing that. But since using Export As, I have noticed that you can export a high quality image and get lower kilobytes. So yeah, obviously you want to use Export As, and that makes sense why this is legacy. So we'll go Export As here. And then you can see you open up, this is the screen you get. You can preview your image. You've got your file information over here, so you've got the dimensions, the file size, and then over on the right here you've also got image size, and this is where you can start adjusting it. So you've got the quality that you can adjust, and then this is the image sizing that you can say. So that's what I was saying before with the dimensions. It's currently 6000 pixels wide. It doesn't need to be that. And same with the quality, we can adjust the quality as well. You can see here you've got format, so you can export in different formats. You could export PNG, GIF, or JPEG. If you want SVG, you'd use something like Illustrator, and you wouldn't be exporting an image like this as SVG anyway, so you don't need that. So first things first, I like to adjust the image size, so the dimensions of the image. Pretty much if it's a desktop, if it's going to be desktop full width, so span the entire window, I would do 2400 pixels wide. Now 2400 pixels wide works well. It's just it's a good intermediary dimension, intermediary size, where it works across pretty much majority of desktop sizes, and without the image being too big, which keeps the image file small, image file size small, which is what I was talking about earlier. So from there, as I said, I like to go 2400 pixels wide. Now, let's say, so 2400 pixels wide is for a full width Bennett image. Say the image was only going to be, wasn't going to be full width, it's just going to be in the page. I would export that at 1200 pixels wide. And a couple of reasons for that. Generally, the column within the web page isn't usually going to be more than 1200 pixels wide. And then majority of the time the image is only going to sit on half the column anyway. But then also when the screen size is reduced to tablet size, generally the standard breakpoint is 1024 pixels wide. So I'll show you on my website here. So you see this is a full width Bennett image. Obviously it's got some just color here, but that's full width, so that would be 2400 pixels wide, that one. If I scroll down to this image here, this is what I'm talking about, it being 1200 pixels wide, because this column here, you can see it's only sitting on half of it. So it doesn't need to be much bigger than that. And then, as I was saying, the breakpoint to go to change the mobile styling, to change the tablet styling, is 10,024 pixels. So you can see there that changes there. So if this full width is 10,024 pixels, you want an image that is at least that. So that's why I said 1200. It kind of just works well. It's half of the 2400. It's easy to remember. So if you export it at 1200 pixels, you know that it's going to still display well at full width. So that's the dimension, that's the width of the image I would export at if it's not going to be full width. If it's going to be full width like this, 2400 pixels. So that's what you do there. So back to Photoshop. Let's assume that this is a full width Bennett image. We'll go 2400 pixels wide. From there, you can see that the image has already dropped to 1.6 megabytes, where it was before about 5 megabytes. So that's great, it's already reduced. So then what we want to do is we want to start playing around with the quality. Now, I like to zoom into 100% of the image so that I can start seeing what it's going to look like once I reduce the quality, so I can find that sweet spot. So the other thing that you can do here in this view, it's got a 2-up, so this is preview and it's only showing one image, but you can go to 2-up, where you can see two versions of the image. So you can see here, this is just the original, so it's 5.2 megabytes, 6,000 pixels wide, whereas this is the one that we were just working on, where it's only 2,400 pixels wide, and it's already reduced. But the thing is, you don't have to keep this as an original. So say this one we've reduced it to 2,400 pixels at quality 6, but say we want to see the difference between the two, so we could change this to 2,400, and we could reduce the quality to 3 or 2, and you can see now the difference between what they'd be. So you can do that. So that's one way to view the differences, but I generally just stick with preview. And like I said, zoom into 100%. We've got the width that we want, and now I'll start playing around with the quality. So you can see if I go to high quality, the image is looking good, obviously, but it's sitting at 4 megabytes, and we don't want that. So I'll start reducing it. I generally start with around halfway, and then have a look and go, okay, it doesn't look too bad. It's a little bit pixelated here. It's still a bit high in kilobytes. So if it's a full width Bennett image, I try and get the image to be around 250 kilobytes or less. And if it's the in-page image that I was talking about at 1200 pixels, I want to sit around 150 kilobytes. Obviously, these aren't strict rules. It all depends on your situation, but it's just good starting points to kind of work around. So, and generally 250 kilobytes works well when the image is being cropped to 900 to 1000 pixels high at a full width. So you can see here it's a little bit pixelated. I can go back to 6, 7 high quality to see how much of a difference. So 4, but say I wanted to get it 250 kilobytes under, we go down to 3. Now, that doesn't look too bad. Like I said, that's 100%. That's the full scale of it. So obviously, each image is going to be different. You can play around with it. There's a little bit of banding here in the gradient. Not sure if that'll show up on the screen, but you can see a little bit of banding there. So those things just keep in mind. But let's say we're happy with that. So that's under 250 kilobytes, and that's full width Bennett image. From there, you can just go export, and that's just going to export the image. So then you can name it whatever you want. Obviously this image is an image from Pexels, which is great. Great place, great resource for free stock images. But let's just call it Bennett image, and then you've got that exported there, which is fantastic. So as you remember, if I go back to the export as, the original image was so I think this was 6. It was about 5 megabytes or 6 megabytes. So I reduced it from a file that's over 5 megabytes in size down to 250 kilobytes while maintaining reasonable quality for the website. So that's fantastic, and that's basically that's basically the process that you go through to export images for websites. And obviously, like I said, it all depends. It's all situation dependent, and image dependent. So you want to adjust those toggles that you can, those levers that you can, in terms of the quality, the image size, and the cropping of the image. And if you play around with them and tweak it, you'll be able to significantly reduce the size of the image while maintaining reasonable quality for your website, which means the page will load faster, which gives a better user experience, which is what we always want. So that's basically exporting images from Photoshop for websites. If you have any comments or feedback, let me know. Thanks.